At Oasis. At this point in our program, we always do something called a community moment. That's where someone from our community gets up and shares a thought for the day, or maybe their testimony of their journey to free thought, or something about a book they've read. Today is going to be a little bit atypical because we have one of our community leaders who's going to fill us in on some exciting things that some Oasis have been working hard on behind the scenes. I'd like to bring up for our community moment today the head of our finance team, Eric Anderson.
Thanks, Mike, and good morning. You know, I was worried for a little bit that this presentation might not happen. I brought my own laptop, and it turns out I don't have the right hookups to be able to adapt to the projector here. Fortunately, Gary brought his work laptop, which means that today's presentation is brought to you by Halliburton. We've reached another milestone at Oasis. We have our first corporate sponsorship. I'm sure he'd be happy to hear that they are helping the community grow. As Mike said, my name is Eric Anderson, and I'm head of the Finance Committee. And what we're responsible for in the Finance Committee is looking at the growth and the financial solvency of Houston Oasis and trying to plan a little bit for the future. As many of you know, for a long time, we have been talking about the dreams and ambitions of this community, and we've talked about our strong desire to one day have our own building. And I'm happy to say that today, we can take a first step in specifying what that dream means and what it's going to take to achieve it. So that's what I'd like to talk about. But before we get into this,
it's only when the mic is open.
Testing, okay. Before we get into that, I want to take a nostalgic look back at where we've come from. This community has only been around for less than 2 years. And when we first began, there are some of you still here, we had a reoccurring membership of less than 20 members. Today, we look around the room and we can see that we have a membership of nearly 100 reoccurring members. And in less than 2 years, we have grown 5 times our original first meeting. Back then, we only had weekly Sunday meetings that we provided to the group. And today, thanks through the many leaders and involvement of the community, we provide a diversity of community service, social, and family events. We just had our family-friendly happy hour. We've done things where we volunteered with the Houston Food Bank. We've, on several occasions, done things with Rebuilding Houston. And we are accomplishing so much more as a community than we were capable of back then. Also, it's important to note that in the beginning, our growth of membership was primarily coming from already established humanist and atheist communities in Houston. Whereas today, we have reached an important milestone in that we are now drawing in new people outside of these communities, which is important because we are helping contribute to the brand of actively involved freethinkers. If you remember back then, we started out in a much smaller space than the room we're in right now. And I think the first room we met in, we were only able to accommodate between 30 and 50 people, which we quickly outgrew. Now, we are in the largest room that Norris Conference Center can provide. There is nowhere to go from here within the building that we're in right now. And if you look around, you may see some empty seats here and there. There's a lot of people at the rodeo today. But on multiple occasions, we have already exceeded our maximum capacity for this room, which is around 100 to 130. That is very concerning because it means that our future potential to grow is limited by our ability to seat new people. If you don't believe me, you can take a look inside the kids' room, which is an important part of Oasis because it allows us to service to families, and you'll see that we have far exceeded our capacity in the kids' room to provide that service to families who want to come to Oasis. Beyond just being able to seat people at our Sunday meetings, like I talked about before, so much of what Oasis has become is beyond our Sunday meeting. It's our service events, it's our social events, it's our ability to give back to the community and support the free thought community. And right now we are limited by our facility availability to put on these kind of events. It may seem like this room is our home, but in reality, we only have it for 2 hours once per week. And if we want to put on any kind of a social or service event, we have to find another facility to support that. I think a great example of this is our many committees that have popped up in the last couple of months. Of course, we have the board, which meets on a regular basis. We have the marketing committee, which has been around for a long time and I think meets once every 2 weeks or so. We have the finance committee, which meets twice a month. And we have the newly formed youth committee. These committees have no permanent place to meet and are forced to default to locations like Ventropolis to hold their meetings, which limits our ability to have future planning. So it has been the dream of Oasis for a long time to move into a more permanent facility for a lot of the reasons that we've already talked about. But when thinking about what our community actually needs and what we can provide for the future, we need to focus on the idea that this is a place that should be able to support us for the next 3 to 5 years, as there is a non-quantifiable cost to moving around too frequently. Now, the analysis that we've done, based on the size of this room and based on what we believe our community can grow to within that time frame, is a meeting space of no less than 3,000 square feet with the ability to accommodate up to 250 people. Now, we actually expect that our community in 5 years will be much larger than 250 people, but remember, we would have access to this facility 24/7, which means that we can have multiple meetings like this on Sundays or any other day of a week to facilitate people of different schedules and to accommodate a larger group in total. Also, an important part of what we're about as humanists is promoting education and activity in the community. We want our facility to have a couple of classrooms. And something we talked about is maybe the classrooms could be divisible with temporary dividers that would allow us to expand them into a larger classroom to do other types of events. Also, like we touched on earlier, it's important that our planning committees have a permanent place they can rely on to plan for the future of Oasis. We could facilitate that with a meeting room/office. And last but not least, something that I think many of you perhaps have not thought about is to cater to the social events of Oasis and to bring more ability to service our community. We could have a kitchen. Right now we have potluck dinners that we do at many different locations across Houston, and that serves a very important goal of connecting Oasians who are near each other. Wouldn't it be nice if we could have a community-wide potluck dinner with absolutely everybody who's a part of Oasis under one roof? That is not possible right now. But if we move into a more permanent place, it is. I talked about this a little bit with the classrooms. Something we can do and something we can provide as a community would be, for example, we talked about doing after-school programs with kids, a science club, promoting science teaching, not indirectly through promoting it politically or pushing for it in schools, but directly promoting that type of learning with after-school programs and science clubs, something that I think would be very interesting for the youth committee to look into and whatnot, and we'll be touching base on all of these things, but these are really just general ideas to give you a concept of what we can provide with a permanent space that we're not able to right now. I think some of the best presentations that I've heard at Oasis have been lecturers, both guest lecturers and people from our own community who are very well educated, talking about science subjects and other things. And wouldn't it be nice if we could facilitate that on a reoccurring and permanent basis and have a monthly or even a weekly lecture series? People could come who are a part of Oasis or not a part of Oasis, just to expand science learning. Going along with that, a permanent facility would allow us to have more social events that can include the whole group. You'll remember at our first anniversary party, we had that at Ventropolis, and even back then, I don't think we had 2/3 of the group we have in the room today, and it was pretty crowded. So trying to do something like that again is limited by our ability to not have a facility to host it at. On the line of social things, we could do things like family nights, reoccurring activities for people of all ages. And of course, being humanists, we commit to the idea of continued education and learning, something we would be capable of providing. There are some things that are less quantifiable about having your own space. We can talk about all the different things we can do with our own space. We can talk about the potential to grow with our own space. But one important thing, one advantage that we have from having our own space, which we don't have right now, is having a public image, a permanent place, a sign, an established place where people can come in out of the street, not people who heard about Oasis through an article and then went and researched it to find out the meeting. People who drove by, people who are curious and just want to talk to some free thinkers can of course come in if we make our space available to them. And beyond this structured style meeting where we have a 2-hour time slot to do our presentations, we would own this, or we would own the right to this space 24/7, which would allow it to become kind of a non-structured social gathering place for free thinkers if we want it to be. A place you could go and read a book and grab coffee or socialize with other people in the community and people outside the community. So it's always a challenge to talk about budgets because it is easy to forget that free thought is not free. But the way that an organization like this works is the costs are delivered up front, while the growth and the benefits come later. That's the way it was when we had our first meeting. We did not see the benefit up front before the meeting. We forwarded the cost to be able to put on the meeting, and we saw the growth and benefit later. That's exactly what happened when we moved from the smaller room into this room. And it is unfortunately what needs to happen here. There is a predictable shortfall in what we would be able to provide from taking this next stage in our growth. Now, we've done extensive research about the costs on this. I didn't want to dive into the finances too much, but I wanted to give you a simple picture of how we came up with our numbers. We're looking for a space that is in this general area, and the market price per square foot is approximately $1.10, and that's with a reasonable build out so that we can have the types of structures we talked about. For the 3,000 square foot meeting area, the classrooms, the kitchen, the office, hallways, etc., we'll need about 4,500 square feet, which means that we're looking at a reoccurring cost of $5,000 a month to be able to support this. You add in utilities, cleaning, and miscellaneous reoccurring expenses, that adds another $650 a month. And then it's easy to forget that the chairs you're sitting on right now, the coffee that came out of that coffee pot, the podium that I'm holding right here, we don't own any of it. It all belongs to Norris Conference Center. If we relocate to a permanent facility, we would need to acquire these things on our own. We have a detailed budget broken out of that, which we can get into at a later presentation, but those costs are approximately $15,000. And so to meet that predictable shortfall with a comfortable cushion, we estimate that we will need around $50,000 to make this next movement into our future growth. Now, the purpose of this presentation is not to ask for donations, is not to immediately start any type of fundraising effort. It's more to make clear exactly what our dreams are and what it takes to accomplish them. But I want you to stay tuned. Over the coming months, the Finance Committee, Marketing Committee, in conjunction with the board, are going to be putting on a series of fundraising and non-fundraising events designed to help us meet this goal so we can take this next important step in Oasis history. I wanted to quickly close with something Johnny said at our last meeting, which I felt was very profound. He said, "Look at everything we have accomplished and imagine what more we are capable of accomplishing." Thank you.
Thanks so much, Eric. You have a quick question? We're going to go into our break time, but is it something you can ask Eric?
I'd like to ask a quick question, could I, about something that Eric just
Okay.
said. I agree that the question of recurring members, or however we define ourselves, attenders, is a really important point to start moving forward. I know how to count, and I was doing it myself for a number of months after I started coming here. How are you actually counting the recurring people, and how are you doing that? Who is doing that?
Sure.
And actually quantifying.
Sure. I'm glad you brought that up, actually. Initially, we were going to distribute a survey today to give people the chance to voluntarily identify themselves and give us a better snapshot of who everyone is and what's going on. I think the discussion about defining membership and about defining who is an Oasian and when they come, it's an ongoing discussion. And it's a difficult one, and I think it's something the board needs to talk about. And I think it's something that we would really value input from everyone on. The going train of thought right now is that we are self-defined. You are an Oasian if you consider yourself an Oasian. We do not have an official membership role. Now, to answer your question about taking attendance, we do take weekly attendance and we do keep track of that. We've been doing that since the Finance Committee started. And actually, I would like to talk to you after the meeting about your numbers, because we've had a hard time getting some historical figures, and maybe you can help us with that if you have been taking attendance. As far as marking down reoccurring people and saying, well, this person came this Sunday and this person came that Sunday, we're not collecting that kind of data right now. I think there is value to collecting that kind of data, but then at the same time, maybe there's a little bit of a cost. Maybe Oasians prefer to be self-identified, and one of the best things about our organization is that there is no God that cares if you come here or not. It is on your own accord that you're here, and it is because you feel there's direct benefit from coming here. Does that answer your question?
Hardly.
Okay. Does anybody else have a question?
You'll be available.
I am, yeah. I'll be available during the coffee break if anybody wants to talk.
Great, thank you. And I just, as listening to Eric talk, I just hope you get a sense and you appreciate, well, all of you, how many people are involved on a day-to-day basis that are working behind the scenes to help this organization grow. It's really incredible, between the board and the finance and the marketing and the youth team and the people who, and like Bart on the camera and our volunteer coordinator. I mean, the list goes on and on. That's one reason why this is such a strong community, is because you guys are stepping up to the plate, and it's simply amazing. If you have more questions about that, feel free to approach Eric during the coffee break time, which we're about to go into. But before we go into that,